subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Namaste, konnichiwa. Welcome to the Nupur show. And as usual, we have very special guest today too. And she is none other than internationally acclaimed best-selling author, Miss Shobha Tharoor Srinivasan. And welcome to the Nupur show, Miss Shobha. Shobhaji.
Thank you so much, Nupur. Very, very sweet of you. And I'm delighted to have an opportunity to speak to your listeners in a whole other part of the world. I've never been to the beautiful country of Japan, but I have listened into some of your shows. So this is a big treat to have an opportunity to say hello from California. I know Japan has had its own tragedies in the last few days. Japan has been on all of our minds, senseless violence, unhappy times, leaders being snuffed out. Both our countries are familiar with that kind of tragedy, and it's unfortunate. But having this opportunity to have dialogues, across borders really brings the community together in some ways.
Exactly, very rightly you said. So the viewers also can make out the way you explained the incident and your words that you put every words here so beautifully. So we'd love to know, how did you start your writing career? Like when exactly you thought this is the career I want to pursue, or this is the thing I want to do in my life?
Well, I grew up in a time in India when books were our form of entertainment, and words are something that has always appealed to me. I have, as I say, words make my heart sing. I have, written essays for radio stations in America, The Perspective, where I talked, where the opening line was, "I've loved words ever since I was a little girl." So we read a lot in the family. We made up word games. We did games that involved stories. That sort of entertainment of the imagination, of words, of stories, of narratives was very much part of our life. And music and words and stories, far more than perhaps in terms of options, was very much an important part of our life. Today, children have many other options. At that time, it was what was important to us. So we used to, even when we were told to even during the summer months, I used to set challenges when I was older. I would read Russian literature one summer. I've actually read Yukio Mishima, and I'm trying to remember, but this was a long time ago. I remember his name and rather tragic stories that I read of his. But there were other couple of Japanese writers I read that summer saying, I'm going to try to read. I felt if I read 3 books from one particular country, I had a better understanding of that country. And, it is true that when you read, you really do open your mind to new ideas, new thoughts, and new places, new cultures. And what's also interesting is it's not just that newness, you also see the familiarity and the similarity of universal impulses, of the fact that we're ultimately all part of the same global community. But anyway, I've digressed. You asked, when did I start writing? When I was little, when I was, told to not do, go sit down in your room and read a book. And if I'd finished a book, I would sit down and do word games and write little poems. I liked writing poetry at that time when I was little, because it seemed like a quicker way to express my thought. As they say, with poetry, sometimes in few words, you can express powerful thoughts. Whereas if you were writing prose, you're thinking more in terms of specific sentence structure and grammar and longer descriptive narratives, etc. I mean, at least that's how my little mind saw it. So I did write, just for my own pleasure or to share with the family when I was little. Then I was fortunate when I was in school, I wrote a little book a story about rabbits, I think it was, that my father, without telling me, sent it to the Hindu children's section in India. And it came out in a Sunday paper. And, once a child sees her name in print, it's very exciting. I would say there is reward in that kind of recognition, and you feel like doing more of it. So that helped, and then as far as writing goes, I was always, because I read a lot, it was an easy subject to choose. I went to America as an undergraduate on a scholarship to study English literature. And when I was in college in America, I worked both for the school newspaper as well as for the school radio station in it was called school, but by the college radio station and the college paper. And in the college paper, I had a column. It was called the Career Exploration column. And it was fun because I like to go out and meet new people. So I would go and interview different people in different careers and then come back and write about it for the students if they wanted to do something unusual, So supposing you want to be a vet, or you want to be an actuarist, or if you want to do, something unusual, that was my task. So I did that for a while. And so I was writing then. And then after I went into a PhD program, which I quit and did a master's instead. Excuse me, I might cough.
No problems, no problems.
I did a master's instead, but pardon, your listeners can know I'm recovering from COVID. Not a nice story, but
yeah. So here I'd like to say to my listeners and viewers that, Shobha had COVID and she's recovering from that, but she's very kind that she gave me time and she made time.
After my master's, I did a lot of, the first job I did after my children were a little bit older was to work in grant writing. Mm-hmm. So I joined to do grant writing for an organization that served people with disabilities.
So here I have a small question. So it's so your parents always encouraged you to write?
My brother was a published writer by the age of 10. He had a serialized novel.
At the age of 10?
In the Free Press Journal. So, writing again was something that I kind of looked up to, but I didn't see as an unusual hobby or an unusual talent because it was very much there in the family. My father used to write as well. When I was a student in America, both as an undergrad and in graduate school, he used to write to me and we had these letter writing relationship because those days that's what we did.
Yeah, exactly.
So writing was very much expected and part of our life. I remember in one of my father's letters, he died a very long time ago, but I still look at his letters from time to time during the year. And the other day I read a letter of it in which he said, in I think 1992 or something, when my children were little, I must have described something. And he said, "You write so well. I think you have a career in writing," which was very sweet of him to say, because it was around that time that I started being a grant writer, but that's a form of technical writing. But, as I say, there are parallels in all kinds of, in both, I say this even about my voiceover work as well as my writing, is that there are parallels in expressing yourself and calling funders to programs as there is in using your voice to call people to a project or a product if you're doing commercials, or a story where you are compelling a reader to engage with the narrative. So there's all of those connections. And yes, was I encouraged? Everything I did was encouraged, but it's not, I think people were happy in my family, my mother and father. My brother kept them so happy that I don't think they bothered us as much, the girls.
Yeah, so this is kind of, it's a family thing. It has become like, yes, writing something what actually we do, like even if it is not a career, but something like it is in our blood, it has become in your family.
Yes, it is. Somebody asked, would it be safe to say that your family is bookish? So I said, bookish, that's an interesting word. And does that mean that the family is interested in books? Definitely. We all read. Even my mother in her 80s, she loves memoirs and she's reading stories of people's lives because at this age, that's what resonates with her. But she used to read, magazines. She used to read everything. Fiction growing up. Now I like a lot of nonfiction, memoirs, instructive stuff. So, our writing changes and our reading changes over the years, but that interest in a book or in discovery or in learning is always there.
Wonderful. So definitely there are many women who are watching this show, and definitely as a woman, I would like to ask you, as a woman, you found it any difficulties to pursue the the author, the writer's career? Have you had any
You know,
difficulties?
the working, you're right. I think as a woman, and that could be just my own limitation in the sense nobody really puts a cage around you. Nobody in today's modern age, nobody's telling you that there are things you can do and you can't do. However, the circumstances were such, I had two little children. I wasn't comfortable leaving them in daycare and things like that. My husband was working in the Silicon Valley as an Indian engineer, which in the Silicon Valley, with its high-paced life and big demands and expectations, I had to decide at a very young age in my 20s that one of us needs to keep their career on the back burner so that if you're going to raise children. I was not prepared. I actually came to America even before my husband did, even though he's older than I am, because I came on a scholarship as an undergraduate, and then I stayed on I went back for a holiday, but I came back for graduate school. He came only for graduate school, and that too, he came after he had done his master's in India. So it's not that I couldn't have said, I started first, I'm going to do it. Nobody's getting in the way of anybody. It's a choice you make. And it could have been my upbringing. It could have been the way I was. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, but she did do a lot of things. As I've said in the latest book that I have written, this
Yes.
one, it's called Good Innings, the Extraordinary Ordinary Life of Lily Tharoor. In
Could you
this
please
book,
show
I
us a
talk.
little bit more for the viewers, the book? Yes, so this is the latest book of Shobhaji. Definitely you should buy. It's
I released
wonderful.
3 books this summer, but this is an adult book and it's about my mother. That's my mother's picture
Yeah.
on the cover. And as I say in that book, even though she was a stay-at-home mother, you have to read the book, and I'm not going to talk about all the chapters, but the amazing amount of things she did, from voiceover work to radio work to films division to learning Robindra Sangeet when she was in Calcutta, or to going to the canning center and learning how to make pickles and can them, and to doing all kinds of interesting things. She was to reading to the blind when she was in Delhi for a long time. So you can keep busy and do things. Now, in my case, I thought that writing a book or doing something like that is extra work to sort of further my own creative interest was something that I needed to put away for a while. So I worked in nonprofit, but nonprofit gave me the flexibility of leaving to pick up the children from school when I needed to attend meetings, to do all of that, school meetings, PTA meetings, etc. Whereas my husband could work the full job. So it is only after my children went away, left the home, went to college, or went to do, their own lives, that I decided to quit my nonprofit job and say that, there are some things that I'm interested in doing. I'm going to make the time to do it. So when you say, as a woman, did you find it difficult? There are many women who try to do it all. Now, I did do it all, but it was a different phase of my life. So I was a director of a nonprofit. I grew in the ranks of the company. I was a full-time coach and chaperone for my children. I used to call myself a talent manager because they were both very talented. So I was in charge of taking them to different activities. Somebody has to do that. And, we are living far away from home. I have no relatives here, nobody to help. Somebody has to take that responsibility. So it wasn't that as a woman, I found it difficult. It's a choice I made. But what I would love to say at this older age of my life, I can say to people that, it's a choice you can make. You may be able to do it all. You may be able to say that this is okay. This is at this stage of my life, this is what I'm going to do. But it's never too late to pick up the threads. So I retired in my 40s from my job, not in my 60s or something, right? So I left that and I said, this is what I want to do now. I started first with the voiceover work, and then I went into writing. And, I used to write always, as I told you, but I wanted to do these creative stories for children. And that's how it began. So that career began, 10, 12 years ago. And touch wood, I'm fortunate to say that my second career is going quite well. Thank you.
Wonderfully you described, and this is such an inspiration for many women, because we always complain because give for this I could not do it, for that I could not do it. So do you think that instead of complaining, we should make the choice, or just bold choice, because maybe many of us are privileged, but there are many in the rural, in India and Japan also, and they feel that they don't have any choice but doing things what is in front of them. What would be
Sometimes we
yours?
don't have the choice. You're absolutely right, Nupur. Sometimes we just have to say, I mean, everybody has a choice, but the choice may not necessarily be to follow a creative pursuit. But we can find happiness in whatever work it is that we wish to do. I genuinely believe that. When I was working, I was not unhappy that I couldn't do what I couldn't be a voice talent, or I couldn't write stories, because I got my joy at that time of doing what I was doing and of nurturing and honing my own children's skills. So that was a creative fulfillment. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It definitely takes, you are a very important part of that village if you are a mother or a parent. Today, I mean, my encouragement to people, one is, you don't necessarily have to wait till they go away. There are times in their life when you could have said, I have time to do this too. I chose not to for whatever reason. Not everybody has to. You can do more, perhaps than I did, but it's never too late. And that is, in some ways, the inspiration of my story, is that you can pick up the threads at any time. And what's interesting is, have you read all the new studies? They're saying, I believe, that the most creative time in a person's life is from 60 to 70, which I had no idea, and then 70 to 80 is the next best time, or something like that. Now, of course, this must have been, a study done by people who are being, successful at that time. So we don't know how expansive their sample group is, but it's a very heartening and lovely story, right? For those who are
Exactly.
still working towards that. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there are examples. I haven't looked it up, but you can do, Mr. Google will tell you how many people publish their first book in their 50s or 60s or whatever, right?
Exactly. You're very rightly you said. So it's not like the way people used to, especially women used to think that, after 40s or after 50s, like we're old, we have nothing to do. Now we have to have a life of grandmothers. So this is like, you can have your different phase of life, and that can be the best phase of your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
As they say, I remember Aristotle, I think he said this. I'm trying to remember who said it. It's a quote that says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit." So you can create sensible habits that, that will allow you to be excellent, right? And the other thing is, it's everybody has their own patch of earth to cultivate. I always say that. I thought you went away. I said everybody has their own patch of earth to cultivate. In it we
exactly.
can grow whatever we want.
True.
So there's nothing that says being a writer is the way to go, or being an artist is the way to go. It's essentially cultivate your patch of earth the way you want to. If it means meditation, that's healthy. If it means yoga, that's great. If it means service to other people in a regular, committed fashion, if it means volunteering somewhere, it doesn't really matter. But I think the onus is on all of us. I tell the children when I talk to them, because I write children's books, Maya Angelou said that there is no such thing as using up creativity. It's like the Akshay Patra, and from the Indian perspective, the
Yes.
more you use, the more it develops, the more it grows. And I think that's just a wonderful way of looking at creativity, isn't it? The more we use, the more it grows, and the more there is to give. So it's all of these things, keeping that perspective, I think, sort of helps us to know that it's never finished. And my mother is a huge inspiration in that way.
Wow, what a beautiful line you said, that more you use, more it grows.
Yeah,
Right. You can use it everywhere, even the love also. More you use, you think about it, so it grows inside you, around you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
beautiful line. Like, wow, I think it is the best line of today, like what you said. So we
I
should
mean, I may
all,
be misquoting it, but it's a Maya Angelou quote about creativity. And I use it, all the time. I mean, and whether I've used the words exactly, I don't know, but you understand what I
yes,
mean. And
yes,
it's
the meaning is most
and
important
even
than
in
the,
science, I mean, we're getting completely digressing, but this is such an important point. I always say that if it's possible, is, it's like breastfeeding. The
Mhm.
more you feed the baby, the more the milk develops. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's something that is one of the messages of La Leche League, which is an organization that talks about milk, which is why you don't see in the villages, mothers who say, oh, we have nothing to give the child when an infant, as long as the child is an infant, even with a poor mother, if she has it in her, the child is going to be fed, and the more the child nurses, the more it develops. So of course you need nutrients. That's a different argument. But,
yeah.
I think we see that in all aspects of life, you know?
Exactly, exactly. I feel like we should have these kind of conversation to inspire other women, Subhaji, because you are such, you are an inspiration for all of us. That not only your creativity, not only as an author, but as a woman, the different stages of life you have already, as a mother, as a wife, you moved to US, as a
As a
student,
teenager.
as a
Yeah,
teenager. Yeah, we'd love to know how was the experience at that time.
to be honest with you, I grew up maybe like a lot of your Indian friends in Japan. I grew up sort of spoiled. I was, my father had a good job. Those days that meant you had all kinds of support. We had staff in the house, we had a car and driver. I had not crossed the street on my own. I had, because I left very at a young early age, the car and driver would pick me up from school. I was very independent in that I acted in theater. I went to a good school. I did all kinds of activities, but it was all under the sort of superficial support of, or not superficial, but under the large support of an infrastructure that was very secure.
Yeah.
Came to America, and I'll tell you, this is the true story. I applied to come to America as an undergraduate, but I was the first batch to do ICSC in Kolkata. And
Okay.
ICSC meant ICSC class 10 and then 2 years of +2. Whereas in America, they were familiar with that senior Cambridge, which is where you
Okay.
finish high school and then you come to America. Now, I went to a very good school where every year one student would get a full scholarship to some college or other in America. And so I applied as well, but I was the first batch to finish 10th and somebody else was the last batch to finish senior Cambridge. The senior Cambridge girl got a full scholarship. I got admission, but no money. So
Okay.
my father said, we cannot afford to send you, forget about it, you study here. So I stopped. I did my +2 and everything. Then I applied again after +2. But again, the problem was that I needed to get a full scholarship because otherwise I couldn't afford to go. We were middle class people, not lots of money to send somebody to America. So anyway, long story short, my father said, if you get a scholarship, I will send you. When I applied, my brother was doing his PhD in America. When I got my full scholarship, my brother had already finished because he was in the record of the university. He's the first one to finish his PhD at the age of 22, and he had left with his job at the United Nations. So when I came to America, my father, who didn't know anybody in America, had to find a friend's friend, somebody to pick me up, drive me to my college, because I didn't know how to do that. That young man dropped me in the college with my 2 suitcases, said thank you, goodbye, and left. And I'm standing at the foot of the stairs, looking at those 2 suitcases, thinking, who is going to take it upstairs? Because that's how spoiled we are, right? So when you say,
Yeah.
how was that experience? That was a quick learning because I realized there's nobody to help you carry it. Now, of course, if you're really struggling, anybody will come to help you. But
True.
the fact is, you're meant to be independent. So you learned independence very quickly. And as a student with only $25 in your pocket, you
Hmm.
really have to learn things very quickly. But when you are young and you are excited and you are a good student, I was so excited to be in college. I wanted to learn every new experience. I was going to, I became vice president of International Club. I joined the radio station. I joined the newspaper. I joined, all kinds of activities. So when you're busy, you're excited, you're coming from India. I also was the only Indian student in that college for 6 months. And then one more student came. So it meant that, I was very unique. So everybody would ask questions. I felt I was representing our country. I went to some school. Somebody not hired me, but invited me, Rotary Club, invited me to go and talk to some 5th grade children, show them how to wear a sari. So, and then people during holidays wanted to host me, to stay in their house, to talk about India. So you felt very special. I was written up in the newspaper, so I thoroughly enjoyed it all. My homesickness came when I was in graduate school, because I think by then I was no longer a young teenager. I was a little bit older, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, I'm so far away from home. I don't, I want to be at, I felt different. In my early 20s, I was much more homesick. I wanted to go back and all of that. But as an undergraduate, I had a really great time.
Wonderful, but there's a very learning. When you went to America, it was did not so many Indians also were there, and as you said, you were only
Indians, but only 90% of them were in graduate school, more than 90%.
Yeah,
because who can afford to go for undergrad?
exactly.
Today, everybody's going, but in
Yeah.
those days, nobody did.
Exactly.
And I was just very lucky that I got a full scholarship. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come either.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. You're very lucky and meant to be, I believe in destiny. So you're meant to be there. Totally. Totally. The life you are leading today, whatever. And the most important thing after talking to you, what I find that you accepted everything in your life very gracefully. Your marriage, your children, your then different phase of life, gracefully and happily.
Yes.
Am I right?
I think I did. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when I first moved to California from New York, because I met my husband in graduate school, and by then I was homesick. I wanted to go back to India. I didn't know he was going to be my husband. I was going to go back. I decided to quit my PhD, get a master's, and go back. And that is when, he kept saying, oh, the interest developed. Anyway, we won't get into the romance, but we made a decision that, okay, he said, why must you think India is far? You can go back regularly. And in his field, he was doing artificial intelligence and computers. There wasn't enough in India. So I thought, okay, I will give it a shot. But then within a year of marriage, I was expecting my daughter. And then once you have children, I had wanted every year, I would say, let's go back to India. But once you're raising your children, you are so busy with that there was no option to think that way. It was only when my children went off to college that all of a sudden, again, I questioned my life. Oh, what am I doing? I want to go back. But I think I'm a very pragmatic and practical person. I've also always seen myself as a global citizen, even though I'm an American citizen in terms of the passport, which I took a long time to take the American passport, but I took it because it really makes it so much easier to travel around the world. That's one reason. But more importantly, if you are raising your children in a country and they are born here, they're American citizens, the American needs are very important for me to consider and to think about. It was very important that I be allowed to vote, to participate in civic things, and you can't do that if you see yourself as an outsider. However, as I always said, I've never seen myself as just Indian American, American Indian, Indian out from outside, NRI, nothing like that. I've always believed that I'm a global citizen, and my children have been raised in the same way. I was fortunate that we worked hard. It was not easy, flying with 2 little children, economy class back and forth, but I did it. A lot of people don't, because I never wanted to sever ties with home. And I never wanted the children to also not have an opportunity to live a full life here. So we did both. But because of that, the children also, I feel, see themselves as global citizens. I think I always did. And all of my writing, the books I've written for children, when people say, interesting, the kind of books you've written, I even wrote a book called Indie Alphabet, which was published in America. And they said, oh, is this a book for Indians in America? And I said, no, because little Indian children, Indian meaning whose parents are Indian, are in classrooms with others. This is for their classmates as well, to know about their friends, right? We're all part of a shared community. It's important to share that information with everyone. So, I've always felt, and my father, again, even in India, as you know, India, we have 22 official languages. We have, a topography that matches a large continent in India, right? I mean, we are a country, but even
Exactly.
within Kerala, we have so many. We have the hills, we have the ocean, we have the paddy fields, we even have, we don't have desert, but we have all these different topography, different geographical, aspects to India. So we are a country of such variety that even Keralites like my parents, going from Kerala first to London, then to Bombay. I never lived in Kerala, but my parents are originally from Kerala. Even the diaspora in India has to make that adjustment, right? So my
Exactly.
father, who made that adjustment, raised us to believe you should be able to eat with your fingers on a plantain leaf, like we do in Kerala, with as much devotion and skill as being able to use a fork and knife if you are sitting at a table with proper cutlery, because it is both are important things to know how to do. And so that is how I was raised. You should be able to speak your mother tongue if you are able. You should be able to go to Kerala if you can. Similarly, for my children, my daughter learned Bharatnatyam in America. She still speaks my language, the Malayalam, her mother tongue. We don't necessarily speak it with the kind of fluency we should, but we are not saying, oh, that's some other language, right? The more, they say, the more languages you know, the more of the world is yours. And that is
Exactly.
essentially my philosophy in some ways.
I think,
So,
yes, please go ahead.
no, I think I answered your question, even if I circumlocuted.
No. I think, I personally, I am learning from you. I'm listening to you. It's so much variety, and you can enlighten, so many today's young women, they're very confused. I'm not saying they're bad way confused. We all are. When we are young, we just, struggle to take the decision, and we just think whether it is the right decision or not. I think you can show us the right way, because you have so many, the way you said that even your children, they can speak Malayalam, they are learning, they learned that Bharatnatyam, your daughter. So these are so beautiful and learning experience, that no, it doesn't matter wherever you are, but your roots are roots, right? Your roots should be there. So I think, I think this is just an introduction of you for the viewers. We'd love to have you again, because I think one episode is not enough for you. We have to have different.
I think we can learn from each other. All
No,
of
that's
us can.
true. That's true. That's true.
I'm sure that there is a story that I would love to hear from you. And, if I read you up, I can and discover that. But ultimately, I learn from the children. I learn from the children who I meet when I'm reading from my books. So I think if you have that mindset to want to learn, we can all learn from each other. But I appreciate that's very sweet of you to say that. Thank you. Of course, the longer we live in the world, the more we have to give to others, right?
True.
So that's another thing
That's
as well.
true. So yeah, I would like to request you to come to my show again with your books only, so we can talk about all of your creation, like what you have created, and you can give us some tips of becoming an author, how to be like can write well.
Well,
So that would be.
you have to want to do that. You have to want to write. And
Yeah.
in order to write, the one advice I would say is you need to read a lot. So,
Yes.
read in the field that you want to write in. That will certainly inform your own creative process.
But we'd love to have an episode on that, with your permission, definitely.
We'll think about it.
So thank you so much for today. Very lovely talking to you, and very lovely learning from you.
It was my pleasure. You have a very warm and inviting show. So thank you for your grace, and thank you for introducing me to friends and listeners in Japan.
Namaste. Thank you so much. Thank you, and namaste. Arigatou gozaimashita.
That's right. My son told me to learn that to say, and I didn't. I apologize. But
no problems. I can teach you. Arigato.
Arigato
gozaimasu.
Gozaimasu.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.